Welcome, everybody. I'm Sarah, one of the admissions advisors here at International TEFL Academy, and we have a Q&A with one of our alumni, Tanner, who is here representing Wisconsin and teaching in Prague. So, Tanner, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I moved to Prague from Wisconsin, and I've been here about 8 months now. My background is some linguistics and foreign languages, and I'm just that kind of guy that likes to learn foreign languages and teach them. So, yeah, that's about me.
Yeah, so, what were your, how did you decide on Prague, really?
I've never learned a Slavic language, so that's how I kind of narrowed it down initially to things like Russia or the Czech Republic or Poland. And then after that, I was just looking at the history of different countries and what I was interested in, as well as the food and the beer, which is great here. So that was kind of what sold me at the end of the day.
Yeah. Had you ever been to the Czech Republic before?
No.
Had you traveled before or been to Europe before?
Yeah, I started school in Holland when I was really young, and I've been to Europe a few times, and I used to teach in Mexico, but this was my first time this far east.
Okay. So, you're interested in, learning a Slavic language, but like, what really made you narrow in on Prague versus anywhere else?
Well, Prague, everything I saw about it, it just seemed like a really cool city to be in. It's growing a lot. I mean, they just had the Velvet Revolution like 30 years ago or so. So a lot's changing in the city, and it's got a very young vibe, and it's got great life outside of work as well. And because everything's changing, there's tons of opportunities to work and grow and find cool ways to expand your what you're doing here.
Yeah. Did you have any like concerns before you were heading there?
No, I think Prague is one of like the top safest cities in the world, so I didn't have too many concerns.
Mm-hmm. And like, tell me a little bit how, what was your experience with ITA? Like your enrollment process? How did you decide what course to pick? How about how did the job search guidance go?
Yeah, I decided to go for the online course with ITA. It was the summer before my final year of college, so I was kind of doing it through the summer, and then I found like my placement at like nonprofit to do my hours teaching, and then yeah, that's how that went. So it was in the summer, and then like the first part of my senior semester of college. But the admissions was super smooth. I think the best part about ITA that I really enjoyed was that if I needed to get in contact or if I wanted to get in contact with somebody and I had a question, it was super easy, and like all like my contacts were always like available, and it was just very nice. They are super good at handling questions.
Cool. So tell us, I know you have a few different teaching positions there in Prague, but tell us about your interview process for the main teaching job.
Yeah, so my main job is I teach English, business English in different companies. I have like 5 different companies I go to throughout the week, and I'll teach middle or upper management there. But the interview process was just a Skype interview. I applied last year in, I think, January, and then I was on vacation. But the company was okay with it, so I got to do my Skype interview early February, and they hired me then, even though I couldn't actually be in country until end of August, early September. So yeah, super in advance, but that was nice as well. Yeah, turned out okay.
Yeah, so that's super cool that you got your job like so far in advance to go to Prague, and you had it like all lined up before you even finished your senior year. That's great. And are they the only school that you interviewed with, or did you interview with, other schools as well?
I sent my application to a few schools, and then I interviewed with like 2 or 3, and then yeah, this was just the one that I wanted to go with.
Yeah, yeah. And tell us a little bit about the visa process. Tell us about the zip code and going through that.
Um, I think it's recommended by ITA, but Visa Guru. So I contacted Visa Guru, and uh, she was super helpful, especially because a lot of the government offices here don't speak any English, which isn't surprising because they speak Czech here, but there's so much English in Prague that maybe people don't expect that they won't speak it in some of these offices. So that was really helpful for me. But it was nice. I think if I had to do it again, I would probably have jumped on the process a little bit earlier than I did, because I kind of waited a little bit and maybe was pushing it with my tourist visa and my work visa a little. But yeah, it
Uh-huh.
was good.
So
Yeah.
you were like planned ahead with everything. You were so far in advance. You got your job in advance, and then when it came to the visa, you were not quite as quick.
Yeah. There may have been like an iffy week in the Czech Republic where I had to just like lay low.
Was there any part of the visa process that you found um, like challenging or time consuming?
Um, well, for the Živno, you have to have 2 things which can be like kind of difficult to obtain, and one is just like an actual like address, like a home. You have to be able to show that you have a place to live for the duration of your visa, and that's not super difficult, but the housing market here in Prague is super flooded, so it can be difficult and take a while to find like a good place. And then on top of that, you have to have a business address. And a lot of landlords here, ideally, the landlord would say, yes, you can use your address as a business address. Ideally, the landlord would sign that, but a lot of them aren't comfortable with that. So you might have to get like a virtual business address, which is you just pay like a yearly fee, and you can have like it's like a PO box.
Okay. Okay. So you said the housing market's a little flooded. How did you find a place?
I started my first month. I was at an Airbnb, like way out in the boonies, super far away. And then I moved right into the center. One of my buddies had an apartment that a room opened up in, so I took that, and that's where I lived for like my first like 8 months. And I actually just moved at the beginning of this month, and now I have a great place like right by Prague Castle, and it's way better. But I found it on Facebook groups, everything on Facebook.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been to Prague. It's been a while now, but I kind of love the areas you're talking about. So you teach both like in a company, and I know you also teach English online and that you private tutor. So tell me a little bit about that combination of activities and how you started doing that.
Yeah, well, I've taught online for probably in total a year and a half, coming on 2 years now. So I've just always done that as a side job. I wouldn't need to do it here, but I just enjoy it, and I have some regulars online that you get to know students, so that's good. So mostly I work about 25 hours a week, actual teaching in companies, and then about 2 to 3 of privates, 2 to 3 hours of privates on the side. And then, like I said, the online stuff, just whenever it fits, if I want, like maybe between 3 and like 8 hours. If I have nothing to do, then I'll do that.
So how much time did it take for you to kind of get settled as a teacher in Prague and kind of put together this combination and have like constant bookings and really kind of feel like you had a full schedule?
Online or with like my actual work, like in person here?
Well, So you've been teaching English online for, over a year, and you've been teaching in person in Prague for about 8 months, right? 8, 9 months. So I guess I'm curious about both. Like, how long did it take you to feel up to speed teaching English online? And then, once you moved to Prague, like, how long did it take for you to kind of find the ideal schedule?
Well, something really nice about the company I got hired with is that they ask you for like what your schedule is. And so I had some control right from the beginning, which was nice. And then, like, for instance, I teach one class on Fridays and I'm done by like 10 a.m. So, you get my company lets you have some control over that. But I think I actually didn't teach online for like 3 weeks when I first moved here, just so I could get in the swing of things with the in-company teaching. And then once I thought, okay, I got this. This is easy. I know what I'm doing. Then I brought in the online stuff. And originally it was just maybe some Friday afternoons or a lazy Sunday or something. But yeah. Or if I
Okay.
have a lot of cancellations, for instance, on like a Wednesday randomly during the week, then I'll just pop in some online hours and make it back that way.
Nice. And then how did you start private tutoring in Prague?
Yeah, I wasn't looking for privates or anything. I just had some fellow teachers that they said they couldn't take on some students and they just thought I would want them. And so I just did it, offered like a free lesson. And if it was good, then continued. But that's how I started. Yeah, it wasn't expected or planned, but it's much appreciated.
Yeah. It's kind of nice how sometimes those like private tutoring gigs like pop up even when you're not necessarily looking for them.
Mm.
Um, do you prefer one or the other, like private tutoring versus teaching English online versus your, teaching corporate clients through your regular job?
Yeah, they all certainly have pros and cons. It's funny because the teaching English online is probably the easiest, but it's also the highest paying of everything. So that's a huge pro to that. But that's with kids, and I feel like I really enjoy just like interacting with adults and being able to have different conversations. So that's a huge pro to the working with adults and in companies and such. You can just have a wider range of topics and you're more in control of the classroom, whereas the online, a lot of companies provide lessons and such, so you don't get to be as creative as when you're doing your own class. And in terms of with my company or privates, my company is great because they're like a middleman, so they can provide me clients, so that's good. And they have a great resource center, so if I ever need resources, those are some of the benefits there. But the pro to the privates is that there's no middleman to take a cut out of what you charge the clients, so that's definitely a pro there as well.
Yeah. I can see how it would be attractive to kind of have a combination because they all have their own pros and cons, really. So are you able to save money now that you're working in the Czech Republic?
Yes, maybe not like a fortune, but if you budget well and you choose what you spend your money on, then I think it's definitely possible. Like, and on top of that, there's so much stuff here to do for free that you don't necessarily have to pay for it, for everything. But yeah, I think if you have at least, if you're working full time, then you can expect to save a little bit, but maybe not as much as in some other countries.
But you're kind of working extra. You're, also teaching English online and private tutoring. Do you feel like you have to do those things in order to save, or
Um,
you're working?
no, not really. I kept the online mostly because I wanted to pay down my student debts, but uh, outside of that, like like I said, it wasn't really necessary. I do it more because I enjoy it, and I have some students that I've just had for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you definitely make enough that it's easy to save a little bit and travel if you want. I just got back from a 3 day trip, 3.5 day trip from Poland, so yeah, it was you make enough to do some fun things.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So, you kind of led into my next question. I was going to ask you, like, how much time do you travel and how easy is it to travel from Prague and, like, where have you been going?
Well, my first couple months, like 5, 6 months here, I didn't travel outside of Prague much. I just kind of explored the city and like wanted to make friends and just get settled in.
Hmm.
But after that, I traveled to like a small town named Mlada Boleslav, and there's not much there, but there's like a big Škoda museum there if you're interested in like cars. But that was like the first place I went, which was a little anticlimactic. But now I've actually got a ton of stuff coming up. Like I said, I just got back from Poland. I think in 2 weeks I'm going to Brno, which is like the second largest city, and then after that I've got trips to like Denmark and Ireland planned for like June and August. So the traveling is just about around the corner.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's great that you tried to stick around quite a bit during your first few months to make friends. Like, how did that go? And did you have like certain strategies or how did you meet up with people?
Yeah. Well, I feel like you said you're from Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
So like Midwesterners super friendly. So I would just like try and be friendly to people and like make friends that way at like pubs or something. But mainly I would go to language exchanges, and I still go to language exchanges like once or twice a week because at least there's a lot of like-minded people there, same as me, who are there for one purpose, just like hang out, talk, speak different languages. So that's a easy friend group to blend in with
Hmm.
in beer gardens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Language exchange, beer usually helps things move
Yeah.
along. Yeah. Uh-huh. So, what are some of your favorite experiences in Prague? Like your favorite food or your favorite places?
Ooh, I food wise, I love svíčková.
Huh. I don't know
The
what that is actually.
svíčková, I wrote down the ingredients. It's braised beef in like a creamy sauce with dumplings, and it's often served with like whipped cream and maybe a little bit of raspberries.
Oh,
And it is super delicious. Maybe a little heavy. A lot of food here is kind of heavy, but super delicious.
wow. Yeah, that sounds delicious. I
Yes.
was in Prague a long time ago and I think, I drank a lot of beer. I ate a bunch of like meat and dumplings and then I stopped at a farmer's stand and probably had the best apricots I've ever eaten in my life.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. Definitely some good food to be had in and around Prague, I think.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. If you could give like one piece of advice to somebody who's like thinking about, teaching English in Prague, what advice would you give them?
Mm. Do you want like my nice cultural advice or my realistic, you're about to move, leave the country advice?
I'd like both actually. If
Both?
you're gonna put both out there, I would like both kinds of advice.
All right. Well, the nice cultural advice is that the Czechs, they people might say that they're a little cold, but I think Czechs are really friendly, especially if you learn a little bit of Czech. And like, it's not, it is very different than English, but the basics, the hi, hello, good day, how are you? Some of that is pretty easy, and I think it goes a long way with people here because I've met expats who have lived here for like 6, 7, 8 years and they can't speak like a word of Czech, and that's just kind of like learn to say hello or something.
Mhm. Yeah, your pleasantries really
Yeah.
go a long way.
But the realistic advice I would say for about you're about to move the country is I would make sure you do have a good amount of startup money. At least enough to sustain yourself for 2 months when you come here, because a lot of people here, it's common to get paid on a monthly basis at the end of the month, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like the month after you've worked. So I started working in September, and I got my September pay at the end of October, which,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not expecting that, isn't great.
Yeah.
So expect that.
Yeah. 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 Anything else, like any other advice or things you want to share to anyone who might be thinking about getting TEFL certified, or tuning into this Q&A?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say do it. Certainly get TEFL certified. I mean, this is like, now's the time to do it. I mean, you're only running out of time, so do it. It's great. You'll never regret it. I don't think I've met anybody that, like, 50 years down the line, they said, man, I regret enjoying that great food and beer in Prague with my new Czech friends I made.
Good point. I don't think I've ever heard anyone regret, teaching English abroad generally. In Prague, in Japan, where I taught, there are like challenges, there are joys, but I think, everyone I've really talked to is ultimately happy that they did it. So, thank you for sharing your experience, Tanner. I really appreciate it. And for anyone who's listening, if you're interested in getting TEFL certified, you're interested in heading to Prague or teaching English online or going somewhere else, let us know. Fill out the form on our website, or give us a call, and we can get you the resources you need to decide if you want to make this happen.